lighting the public realm for people. This is actually a truncated presentation that I did for the Association of International Lighting Designers this morning, and was a kind of why do we light the public realm for people? Why do we put people's concerns at the centre of our designs? And then followed on with a how. It was kind of a bit more of a nuts and bolts, how do we practically apply that, followed off with some projects. But the only thing you're going to miss today is the boring form-filling bit of the how stuff. So I'm going to concentrate on the why, and then we're going to finish off with some projects, which hopefully should dovetail into Sam's presentation as well. So the why. Why do we design lighting in architecture? Well, there are many reasons. Quite a number of them are based around self-satisfaction and ego. That we actually just love creating stuff. It's nice finishing a project and going out and saying, I did that, and it's good, it's bad, but it's there is the satisfaction of just having done something. And there's also, it's nice to get respect from your peers and from your colleagues, the people you work with in your office every day perhaps, and the colleagues within the design team, and maybe even win a few awards sometimes, which would be nice. Of course we're also commercial designers as well, so there is the fact that we get paid for doing what we do, and that's important because that means somebody's paying us and we have to satisfy their aspirations. But there is another part, which is, which I think that's, those three reasons on their own are fine, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with them at all, but on their own they're not really enough. Because at the heart of this, I believe that lighting design is significant. It's impactful. It has a very strong effect. And for that reason, if that's true, it's only true in the context of actually being significant, useful and beautiful for people. It only has any value if it's witnessed, if it's used, if it's inhabited by real human beings. And if you're going to do that, then you have a responsibility to those human beings and you need to think about those concerns, which is kind of things I'm going to be addressing in the next few slides. It's all very well saying we design for humans and people. That sounds a bit fluffy and liberal, to be frank, unless we're quite specific about what we mean, who those people are. And this is a test that I actually apply within my practice, which is we try and, when at the beginning of any project, to ascertain the total stakeholder set by applying the three tests of those who use, inhabit and encounter our designs, potentially when it's finished. And that's important because within the commercial relationship of client and design team, that will not encompass all the stakeholder interests in any one project. And I'll give you an example of how that applies. So I apologise, we have got one form, but hopefully it will be illuminating. It's something that actually we apply to all our projects, and we don't only design for the public realm, but we also do design internal and external schemes in a wide variety of environments. But it is a generally applicable process. But if we just think about the urban realm for the moment, and that's the kind of the bottom the line there as an example. If under the use column, and this is based on a real project which we've just completed in Exeter just before Christmas. Under the users, we've got the developer who's actually spent an awful lot of money on their project and needs to get a return from their tenants. We've got the tenants who actually probably in the main are chain retailers who need to get a return from their rent, and we've got the shoppers, obviously the people of Exeter and anybody from the outlying areas that come into the centre to spend their money, and we've got the council who are interested in the tax revenues that are generated by this scheme. And none of those people actually necessarily spend any time in the development at all. But yet the lighting design needs to satisfy their concerns. We have got, in the Inhabit group, we've got the retail and the non-retail staff that actually use the centre day in, day out. And they've got another set of concerns. That might be retailers in terms of the people that are going to manage the shops or actually work in the shops, but we've also got people that are going to maintain the estate and come and visit and service the estate on perhaps an irregular basis. And they will have another set of concerns which we will need to draw into a design. And then there's the encounter set, which is more general but still significant. So, for instance, the people of Exeter, they may never come into the centre, which frankly is unlikely, but even if they don't, it will have an effect on the permeability and the urban grain of their city. It will possibly, hopefully, engender some level of civic pride. It will have a supra-town impact in terms of its impact on the region. There are also other interventions like public art, transportation, pedestrianisation, and all those sorts of concerns which I'm assuming are very, very familiar to you, but they are something that the lighting designer will integrate with intimately as they create their design. When last year the PLDA organised a conference with another four-letter acronym, PLDC, and two of the speakers there were guys called Joran and Eric, who were kind of lighting punks, is the way that I kind of describe them, and they were absolutely fantastic. They were from Sweden, and they did lighting projects in Swedish housing estates around the rings of some of the big cities, which were pretty much really dreadfully lit. And they were employed by the local councils to halve, their remit was to halve the electricity consumption in the parks. And they thought, right, well, we could do that, we could actually get better on that, we could turn all the lights off and we save all the energy. But really that kind of isn't the point. What we need to do is identify how not only to save energy, but also to provide better lighting to those citizens, which in the main were just flooded with very uniform levels of sodium lighting, which is great for buses and cars, but absolutely rubbish for people. What they did, rather interestingly, is the first thing they did is they went around all the inhabitants of these suburban projects and started canvassing opinions of what they wanted from the public realm, but not asking specifically lighting questions, but more wider questions about what their aspirations for their environment were. They then followed up with small little temporary mock-ups to start engaging the population. One of the things about lighting is it's actually very, very ephemeral. It's quite difficult. You can't build a model of lighting. It's not like a building. You can't build a building. It's like, that's what you're going to get. It's very, very difficult to talk about or illustrate. But it's much better and actually relatively easy to demonstrate. And what we tend to find is once you've demonstrated it, that's when people start engaging with it, understanding with it, becoming enlivened and excited by it. And so that's what they did. They got a load of people on side, and then they started installing their schemes. And one of the things there was lots of benefits that came out of it. Sweden's got long, long winter nights where most people sat indoors. But what was really interesting after they'd installed these things is the people were coming out and they were starting to use and socialise in a very non-typical Northern European fashion. What happened also was the crime rate went down because those places were populated and the graffiti was practically much disappeared. And the equipment, which on the face of it seemed quite vulnerable in the way in which it was installed, wasn't getting destroyed or disrespected because the total population were policing it in a way in themselves because they were so enthusiastic about the lit effect. I mean, picking up on your comment, it's not about the kit, it's about what comes out of the kit, which is important. They were so enthusiastic about that they were policing it themselves. And then also, because they were, and this is a very important thing about lighting, is it's not so much where you put the light, It's where sometimes you decide not to put the light is more important. That lighting and the objects which you choose to illuminate sing best when surrounded by an environment of darkness. You need silence to hear sound, you need darkness to see light. And consequently, by composing the environment and choosing the aspects that they wanted to create focus and accent to, and leaving the rest to go slightly dark, they were also saving their 50% of energy, but through a very beautiful and productive and socially impactful fashion. Another example close to home was the installation called Volume, which was in the Victoria and Albert Museum. I don't know if anybody went to visit it, but it was a sound and light installation. The sound bit was done by members of Massive Attack, that good old Bristol combo of the early 90s, and it was very, 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 very beautiful. But if you didn't have anyone in it, it was just a composition that kind of did its stuff. And then as a single individual approached it, there were pressure pads in the floor, and it sensed where you were and stuff happened and what have you, and it allowed you to play with it and interact in it in quite a gentle way. But then when you got lots of people involved with it, then it all started, and you not only were interacting with the light installation, but you were also interacting with each other, and you found that people started experimenting, doing things together. And this is one of the beautiful things, I think, of light, is that it has the effect. People tend to gather to the light and join and commune and talk and communicate, and this is one of the really fantastic things that lighting can do. I did a lighting installation when I used to work for a company called Morris Brill Light Design in the city. I don't know if any of you know it, but Finsbury Avenue Square is a grid of colour changing LED and ground up lights next to Liverpool Street Station. And one of the joyous things about it was that when we were going and commissioning it and what have you, that the city workers that normally heads down to the tube, go home, get to home county as soon as possible, had brought their children to it, and there were these children who were playing hopscotch in a central city banking zone, and it was a magical moment. It's the kind of thing that light can do. But every time we, as lighting designers, do decide to draw a dot on a piece of paper, every time we decide to install a light fitting, we have to recognise that we are having an impact on the environment as well. It's not all good news. The statistics say that lighting accounts for 20 to 30% of all electricity use in the country at the moment. It's massive. Now, most of that will be from domestic, light industrial and street lighting. Those are the three big users. And as lighting designers, professional independent lighting designers, we probably account for about 10% of all the installed projects in this country, which is not an insignificant proportion, but not by no means the majority. But our responsibility as lighting designers is, I think, in terms of thought leadership, and to be cognizant of the fact of our responsibilities, and to engage positively with education and the political process to spread the issues, because they're not really as simple sometimes as we think they, or as the general population thinks they are. And I probably won't go into it now, but there's a hot topic at the moment between the old GLS light bulbs and the new energy-saving ones, and one's bad, one's good, and that might be case, but it's not as simple as the debate is being presented at the moment. And there are issues of, for instance, the compact fluorescent light bulbs are quite energy intensive to make, but low energy to use. But they're being made in China, where they're all using coal-fired power stations, and used in Europe, where they're using in terms of cleaner generation issues. So is the total carbon, the total life cycle uses of those, is it carbon neutral, or is there a carbon benefit, or is there not? There are also issues to do with toxicity. The fact that the compact fluorescent ones have got mercury, That's fine if we all recycle them nicely, but if we all dump them into the landfill, what happens to our water supply, and so on and so forth. The issues are really quite complicated, and it is behoving upon us to really engage in an intellectual and responsible fashion.
So is that line going to be maybe only for UK, for London?
No, that's, I think, a worldwide estimate. There is, on this theme, a festival. It was held last year, wasn't it? Lights Out London, where
it's like a sort of internet kind of.
what happens if we turn the lights off in a particular time? And I think it was the middle of the night on one wet Thursday kind of thing.
I don't know if anyone
But it was nonetheless interesting, and it was photographed and documented. Whatever. This is actually a project that we did many years ago, but the one on the left is what it looks like when it's all turned off. It's not just as simple as turning it off, because if you do turn it all off, you lose the benefits of what it can give. There was a debate I had with a street lighting manufacturer who was saying, oh no, it's terrible because there's actually the sustainability debate is saying that we can't do decorative lighting anymore. So, no, not actually, because you've got to, again, think about the total impact of the lighting. And if that actually means that good lighting gets more people to feel confident to walk and cycle into the town centres, then the total CO2 impact of introducing some lighting might be in the round beneficial. So you have to think of these things in the round. And then there's various other examples of what that looks like. There are, I think, very persuasive arguments, for instance, into introducing better and more sophisticated controls into office lighting, so they're not flooding on the whole time. And really it's just a complete waste. If there's nobody there, what the hell are they doing on? Now, some of those banks, some of the Canary Wharf buildings, they do have 24/7 operations. So but a lot of it is just laziness and not putting controls in and then not using them.
Just on that point, I remember when I was at school, there was this whole argument that the lights are on at night because you have to keep the power stations running, and that's such the electricity.
Yes, bollocks.
Free.
Yeah, utter rubbish. Because the whole argument against wind stuff is that it can't provide you with the constant trickle, and it can only happen when it's peak. The problem with power generation in this country at the moment is you actually want to withdraw the base level that you're using the whole time, and you don't. It's absolutely because then you don't need as many fossil-powered power stations or nuclear power stations, which are well. If you end up with a big base, what they're essentially saying is we've got a whole load of big power stations that have to run the whole time, so we've got to use them. But actually what we should be doing is reducing that base by turning the lights off at night, so that we don't have to rely on so many fossil-powered and nuclear power stations. So, sorry for my...
Turning the lights on and off twice a day, especially fluorescent ones. There's a big surge each time, so leaving them on for 8 hours non-stop. It's more efficient than turning them off.
No, it's not. No.
No,
what happens is that if you turn fluorescent lights on and off, that's what reduces their life. There is a little electricity surge, but nowhere near close to what the energy used in running for 8 hours. It's a bit like photocopier. You can leave it on all night, but then if you do, that is actually about the same as making 1,000 copies. Turning fluorescents on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off, there is then the question that you reduce their lamp life so much that you're increasing the toxicity and the energy in making them. But you've got to do it an awful lot. And certainly twice a day is typically the recommended level of switching that you should be doing. And also you can these days dim them. So even during the daytime, if you actually even if you decide not to switch them off, you could reduce them to 20-30%, rather than running them at full. So I talked about power of light to an extent. It is its power is not only about lighting things, it's about creating relationships between people. And it is demonstrable that is its effect. But I shall pass on from that. And this is, I suppose, another sustainability slide. It's about the concept of the triple bottom line. Any environmental impact that you measure, for a design to be truly sustainable, it can not only deliver solely environmental benefits, because the extreme example is you turn all the lights off, but socially it's unacceptable. Also, it might be that you could introduce some technology that would save energy, but if you can't afford to do it, frankly, it ain't going to happen. So it's our responsibility, and it is entirely possible by introducing intelligence into our designs to satisfy that trinity and to produce stuff that is cheaper, brings greater benefit, but also delivers the sustainability, the ecological benefits that we all desire and need as an imperative to deliver. Some examples now, projects. I've stopped whiffling, some pictures. Guerrilla Lighting is a live installation project which is, it's essentially a political lobbying lighting project. Guerrilla as in not monkeys, but as in urban fighters. So what we do is we pick some really horrible, unloved bits of cities, and we've done this in London, Manchester and Glasgow so far, and then do a kind of agit-prop thing on it, which hopefully will become clear what's kind of doing. But it's a temporary installation involving lots of people and lots of torches, essentially. What we do is we invite typically about 50 and 100, although what happens is once this starts happening you get loads and loads of taggers on, and we supply them all with big high power torches and also little LED markers and stuff. But what the important thing about the battery thing is it doesn't need any electricity or wires, so you can come en masse, turn it on, go and disappear. And you don't need all the money and the organisation, permissions, and of getting wires in, which gives us a lot of flexibility. But it isn't completely anarchistic or disorganised. There is actually an element of military precision to the whole event as well, and also conceptual preparation. So we will come to a site, we'll think of what we actually want to do with it in terms of creating it. And then we'll segment that concept into bits and essentially assign platoons of people to deliver that little bit of the design. And then when you add them all up together, the reality becomes reality. This is a briefing session where people are allocated. It's just on the night. These guys turn up and then they're briefed on it. So they don't have to invest any time other than the event itself. But the team leaders know what they're doing, and they're given 6 strangers, and off they go. And it's a nice way of meeting people. And so you then assemble at the thing. Your team leader tells you what you're going to do. You aim, you fire, and then the moment is captured in film, or typically actually photographing. And then the security guard comes along and chucks you off the side. So that's that one. But somebody asked me this morning, what's the point of this? It comes back to this thing about the ephemerality of light and how difficult it is to actually talk about it. But it's a beautiful and magical thing if you can engage in it, and if you can engage people in the creation of it, it's going that one step further. But also it's being used when you can show the before and afters to politicians. It's actually a very persuasive example of what could be done if this is 50 people and 50 torches. What could be done actually if you engaged in this process. This is actually a before shot of one of the projects we did in Manchester, and you won't be able to tell at the moment, but it's under a bridge, a viaduct, and it's nowhere that any sane person will walk at night. Although during the day it's a cut through which people do use a lot. And this was the concept which we thought of doing, and then hopefully this will work, and that was the reality. That's a real photo. That was 50 people, 50 torches, and a whole load of LED sparkle lights set on the floor. Now you send that to local council and say, why aren't you doing that? it's difficult to really counter it. And these are some just the close-up shots. Princess A Exeter is, I mentioned earlier, this is a project of new urban regeneration based on mixed use. And I know that mixed use regeneration is kind of a hot topic. There are a lot of projects that are being done at the moment, are just about coming on stream. But I think this is one of the early ones to be completed. And obviously mixed use has got retail, office and residential mixed in together. Here, I suppose our concept for this was summarised. It was street lighting without street lights. So the idea was that there wouldn't be anything that you would recognise typically as a street light, but it was all lighting integrated within the architecture or within the art that was dotted around the development. And there were a number of architectural set pieces, but part of what we did, we didn't choose to light all of it. We just chose the bits that we felt were important, and that is what gave the city its legibility at night. It identified portals, it allowed people to navigate by seeing stepping stones of light, and also gave it an identity, an aesthetic identity at night, which it has during the day very much. The architecture is good and variegated, but if you're not expressing that at night, then it gets lost. So there's a Wilkinson Air building, a store, and then another Wilkinson Air building, which is a car park. And as I say, art was a very, very important part of the whole project. And in fact, one bit of it was lit entirely with art. But one of the big effects on it has been that the high street previously really didn't have any. People used it, shut shop, go away. That was it. Dead at night. Nobody really used it at all. But what's happened with the new development is there's a new real nightlife culture happening. A lot of restaurants and bars have opened up, and it's generated. The people of Exeter are using it, but also what's happened is it's acting as a magnet now for nighttime economy. So people are coming from the outlying areas, and you can't now get a hotel in Exeter. So they're now going to have to build some more hotels. So it's generating some income and business, and so it's going on. And obviously the take in terms of the council is going up, so that's being reinvested in the infrastructure, and so the story goes on. But without blowing my own personal trumpet, because this is a thing that is generally true of lighting, is that the economic benefits of generating a nighttime economy you cannot do without it. But the benefits of it are profound and beginning to be really well documented now. Liverpool's got a study on it. Whitehaven in Cumbria has got a study on it. Exeter, I think, are doing one. So there's real data. It's not a put some lights in, it will be lovely. It's hard and documented these days. Last project, and then I'll shut up and hand over to the next speaker. This is an art project that we're doing in Liverpool. There is a long approach to Liverpool Street station, not Liverpool Street, Lime Street station in Liverpool. And it's all a bit dull at night. So we were asked to do an art project on it, and this is it really. Typical Victorian architecture. The concept that we came up with was to put a series of linear LED strips along the line of it, but we didn't want to use any electricity, so we attached to those a series of anemometers, which is a posh name for a half a ping pong ball attached to a bicycle dynamo, and during the quiescent state, unless there's no wind, in which case it's all off, you will tend to get this rippling line of effect. But then when the trains go past, they all go mad, and you get this kind of ripple effect all the way down. So that's kind of... the reason I put this project in was it was not... Lighting's not all about functionality, but it should always be about conceptual content and responsibility, I suppose. It sounds a bit grand. I hope it doesn't sound too pompous. But it was a bit of fun. It's not costing anyone any CO2, and I think it's adding positively to the environment. and we just had to decide how we were going to. This was actually a bit of VE, a bit of value engineering. We couldn't decide. We couldn't put them regularly all along because we had to cut the budget. So, well, how are we going to cut this budget in some way that makes some kind of sense? So we decided to go for the dot matrix, and the layout of it actually is the barcode for Birmingham. There you go. And so I will now conclude and hand over to the next speaker. But I hope, Lee, what I've got over in my rather ramble is that at the heart of this, we're not lighting things, we're lighting things for people. So, thank you very much.